Hi there everyone, I'm Steve Wyss from the Nordic Football Podcast, and I'm here to talk about Eliteserien Fantasy 2020. So, as many of you are aware, the game was updated and came live a couple of days ago, and I know there's a lot of thoughts and opinions out there already about the game in this year. So I'm going to add my 2 pence worth in a relatively short video. I don't know, maybe I might ramble on a little bit longer, but these are some initial thoughts about the game and my first draft of players, so maybe give you a few ideas going forward. Still a good month until the start of the season, of course, so a long way to go, but just some initial thoughts in general about the game. I think the prices are pretty steep for a lot of players. I mean, if we look through the highest price list here, midfielders, you got Magnus Wolf Eikram up at 12.5 million, which is a huge price, and there's a good, nearly 10 players there, at least 9 million in midfield. In attack, Lecky James at 12 million, and there's a lot of really high priced players, and my feeling here is that if you want to, it's going to be very difficult to get together a really strong all-star team. You're going to have to make sacrifices somewhere along the line. For example, if you wanted James and Berven together along with, say, Magnus Wolf Eikram, I'm not sure you're going to be able to do that and be competitive, because at some point, in your respective team, you're going to have to make that sacrifice. Which couple of big names do you want? Which 2 or 3 big names are you going to do without? So it's going to be interesting how people juggle their teams together. So I've gone with the first draft here, and I'll explain these players going forward in the video. I'm going to start with a player that everyone simply has to have in their team, in my personal opinion, and that is Lecky James of Molde. It's not rocket science. I'm pretty sure everyone who plays this game will have James in the squad, because, to put it quite simply, I think he's going to be the top scorer in the Eliteserien in 2020, hands down. I mean, he nearly got the golden boot last year and only played, only started in half the games. So he's in the best team. He's going to get a bunch of chances. He's a clinical finisher. Over 50% of his shots go on target, actually, from Lecky James, and he's a must-have in your team. I don't see, unless he gets injured significantly, then I don't see how he's not the top scorer in the league. So you start him all day, every day, 24 hours a day against whoever Molde are playing against. It's as simple as that. In my opinion, you've got to have him in your team. After that, I think there's a lot of different areas that you can look at. I'm going to secondly go into a player at Ålesund called Nicolas Castro, a Chilean international, and now 31% of people have signed him up already, and this does not surprise me, because he's probably the best value pick out there in the whole game. 8.5 million. I don't know why he's listed as a midfielder. I mean, I know he's played there, but really he's more of an attacker, and he scores a lot of goals. He tore up the Obosl again last year, and I'm really excited to see him in the Eliteserien 2020. I think Ålesund are going to be quite a decent side, and he's a snippet there. A really good price at 8.5. I think I could see him scoring quite a lot of goals. He's obviously not going to be the same level as he was in the Obosl game, but he's the type of player I could see him getting sold in the summer to somewhere if he really catches the eye, and I think most teams are going to end up with Castro in them because of his value. So for me, they're the 2 players that I'm looking at. We're going to start them most weeks probably, unless Ålesund have a really tough game. But the rest of the lineups, now I did this last year in a fantasy video. I've looked at the fixtures for the first 7 weeks of all the teams, and it's interesting viewing as we go here. So they are the fixtures for the first 7 weeks. On the left hand side there are the teams. and their 7 fixtures, and I've colour coded it in terms of difficulty or supposed difficulty. This is actually an unbiased review here. These are not based on my own personal thoughts. I've gone with Nordic Bet, so it's gonna be interesting how we saw it. I've gone with Nordic Bet's odds for the year. Now, I don't bet with this. I don't have an account with Nordic Bet, but they're usually quite sharp in terms of predicting stuff. So Molde are favourites for the Eliteserien, Rosenborg second favourites. It's going to be one of those two that win the league. I'm absolutely certain about that. Probably Molde. And then after that, I hear the odds going all the way down to Sandefjord and Mjøndalen start at 200 to 1 to win the league. So what I've done, I've colour coded it. 4 different colours. The top 4 in the betting, the hardest 4 teams, followed by the next 4, followed by 4 after that, and then the bottom 4 I've colour coded as the easiest in terms of that. So as we go into see these fixture lists again, it's you can pick a few things out, and for example, start here. According to the colour coding, they don't play one of them top 4 teams in the betting in the first 7 games. So a soft start for them, no pun intended. Whereas you look at some other teams, and actually Molde and Rosenborg have a tough start. No bargain for the 2 favourites. Rosenborg, for example, they're starting with Brann at home, Haugesund away. Probably not as easy as you think either. Molde at home, Odd away, Vålerenga at home, Strømsgodset away. Even round 7, Ålesund away. I actually think Ålesund, they're listed green here as an easy team. I think they're going to be better than that. But I'm going with Nordic Bet's odds for now. So I'm looking at Molde, Rosenborg, and Vålerenga. Actually, they have another team have a tough start, a toughish looking start. So if we go back to the fantasy game, and we look at some of these higher priced players like Magnus Wolf Eikram, Paul Andre Helen. Now, don't get me wrong, they're going to score points if they're fit. And by the way, talking of fitness, there's probably doubts with both in the long-term ability to stay on the field. Magnus Wolf Eikram often gets subbed off after about 70 minutes. He's probably scored a shitload of points by that time. Helen could go down at any point. He's made of cotton wool. I know he's had a great pre-season, but you never know when he might go lame. And I'm very tempted just to leave those. I'm tempted to avoid Molde and Rosenborg players in the first few rounds, because is the point scoring necessarily going to be that significant? There's some tough fixtures for them early doors, and certainly in say the first couple of rounds, as we look again, they're Molde. I've got Vålerenga away, Rosenborg away to the first 3. It's not simple, is it? So yeah, Lecky James is the absolute. You've got to start him throughout the whole year. But I'm not in a rush to get Rosenborg and Molde players in my team right now. So I'm going to look at some. I mentioned start having a easy looking start, and we're going to look into their team because I think this is the side that you can look at, potentially bag some players in the first few rounds, and they might score quite well for you. Promoted teams often have a bounce, unexpected bounce, and do better than expected, and then they kind of fade off, and maybe it might happen with this team. So I've picked out a few players. The goalkeeper, Doimeland, he impressed me last time he was in the top flight. He can make a few good saves. He's going to be your starter at 4.5 million. You could maybe do worse than him, having him in your squad, even if he's not your first choice goalkeeper. A nice backup to have. I've looked at the left back, Turnerson, who I'm not actually sure if he's going to be the regular starter at this point in time, but on 4.5 million, not a bad price. Might get you an assist or two going forward in those first few weeks where the fixtures are easier. And Kevin Cabran, a player I'm quite familiar with. Last time he was in the league, I like him. I'm just one of them players that always catches my eye. He's good technically, and give him an easy sort of matchup, he could probably get you a few points. 7 million's not that bad a price for someone of that quality if he's going to be one of the leading playmakers in the team. So a few others that you might want to look at. I know Damien Lowe might be popular, but a bit expensive for me for a central defender. They're not necessarily going to get clean sheets start, even if the fixtures are favourable. So you really need him to get you a couple of goals, but he's a threat from set pieces. I look, the right winger Markovic is one to keep an eye on. Maybe he's been starting a bit in pre-season, might get you some points. And up front, Martin Ramsland, who famously got them in this league, scoring a bunch of goals in the playoff match against Lillestrøm. You could probably do worse than him as a striker at 7 million. So I think starter a team you can look at. And another team, promoted team, Ålesund. I mentioned I think they could go quite well this year, and again, not a bad start in terms of fixtures for Ålesund, and I think they'll be quite an exciting team. There's goals in them, and I picked out a couple of players here. Castro I've already mentioned. I think this is a team playing a 3-4-3 formation, so it's wing backs going into sort of wide midfielders, and Hatlahol is an interesting case. Bagged a few assists, a couple of goals last year. I could see him sort of getting forward on that right hand side for them, and supplying points from an offensive point of view. And Ålesund will probably pick up the odd clean sheet here and there as well. So you could also look at Olafsson on the left hand side, but he's 500,000 more, and whether or not he's a bank at a start, I'm not sure either. So I'm going for the cheaper option here at 5 million, but you could go look at Olafsson. Up front, I've gone with Agderstein, who scored a few goals last year. He's always, to me, felt like an Obos player, not an Eliteserien player. He's always struggled at the top level, but this might be his chance, because the other striker here, Frid Johnson, is out for 6 weeks with a bone bruise. So I think he's going to be eased back into action, and I could see Agderstein getting some minutes up front, and this team's probably going to create chances for him. 6.5 million. I'm going to follow their pre-season games and see if he's getting the minutes as expected. He could be a good price at 6.5 million. And I know some people have talked about Nordley being a potential, Simon Nordley being someone to keep an eye on. Yeah, 7 million, he could supply some creative stuff. So I think Ålesund are well worth looking at in terms of they get a good start as a promoted team on the bounce. Now, again, I'm going back to these fixtures again, and Brann do catch my eye a little bit. They've got a tough match first up against Rosenborg, although I could see that being a sort of low-scoring sort of contest, especially if it's a cold day. They managed to hold them to a 0-0 there last year. I'm not saying they're going to do the same again, but that's a tough game. After that, they've got a manageable run of fixtures. It's Stabæk, Sandefjord. At the moment, I think Sandefjord may well be the worst side in the league, perhaps, along with maybe Mjøndalen. But they've got a run of fixtures here, which is possible. So you've got to look then at the Brann team and say, who can we get in to the lineup from Brann? And I've gone with Bismar Acosta at the back, because I see them being quite solid defensively early on in the season. They went away from that identity last year, so I could see them wanting to get it back. Now, he's a central defender, so he's not going to supply you in terms of assists, crossing, getting forward in that way, but he's a threat from set pieces. He does score the odd goal, and he's going to be sort of a talisman at the back now that Vito Wormgård's gone. So if you want someone sort of for the long term of the season, and Brann will keep quite a lot of clean sheets, maybe more clean sheets than anyone in the league. So Bismar Acosta is one to look at. You could look at the whole back line, really. Tenista, Christiansen, or maybe Grøgaard if he's starting. But I think Acosta's a safe option. Ideally, maybe you don't want centre backs in your team unless they're on penalties or really big threat going forward. but I think he could be an option. And I'm still looking into Brand really to see what other players going forward. Bamber definitely down the line is someone to keep an eye on as a striker. He could have a good year. Haugen in midfield was injured a lot last year. He could have a nice bounce back. Petter Strand had a good year last year. I'm certainly not discounting Brand. There's more to look at there. Buda Glimt were brilliant last year, and they've got some fixtures early on which I think they can take advantage of. Fredrik Björkan, 6 million. I think it's a cheap price. He scored a lot of points last year at left back. I've seen suggestions that he's going to be moving positions, potentially into midfield at times, or even on the wing. So more chances to go forward. I think, to be honest, I mentioned earlier Lecky James and Nicholas Castro. I think Björkan has got to be one of your mainstays in the team. Really, he's a pretty obvious punt. And in midfield, Jens Petter Hauge probably going to replace Evian role. Even towards the back end of last year, he was doing that. 7.5 million for Jens Petter Hauge. And yeah, I like him as a price. I mean, again, keep your eye on it. Sometimes these sort of players can be benched, but he's got all the ability to do that. I would like to add a striker if I can, but I don't know who's going to start out of Juncker or Boniface. Just maybe they can both start, one on the wing. But I'd like to see who's getting the nod in general here. But one of these two, I think, if not both, could score a lot of goals and points for Buda Glimt this year. And then another team that caught my eye with the fixtures is Sarpsborg. Actually, I think they've got potential. Early on, they're facing two promoted teams in Sandefjord and Ålesund, and they've also got Mjøndalen in there who may struggle. So they've got a Buda Glimt at home is not such a tough proposition as going away there. So if Sarpsborg can get their act together early doors, there's maybe some players to look at in Sarpsborg. The one that I've gone with is Mohamed Ofkir, a player I've always rated. Winger. It looks like they're going to be sort of 3-4-3 as well this year, similar to Ålesund, and he's going to be out on the wing there. Ofkir, 6.5 million. Not many people are going for him. 2%. He could be an interesting differential maker. I think Sarpsborg are a sort of squad where you could have a look through it and pick someone that is under the radar, whether it be Thomason at left back. Seen someone mention Bojang maybe as this right wing back option. I don't know an awful lot about him, to be honest. But Strand Larsen up front, some people are saying this is his year, but he kind of teases you in pre-season, doesn't he? But then come the actual Eliteserien year season, he doesn't deliver. Maybe this year he can deliver. It looks like he's going to be that sort of lone striker or on the zone in the middle anyway. But if he's not in form, Moss could come in or Shelevic. So yeah. Sarpsborg are a team to look at early doors. And I just want to talk about the final players that I've gone with. Lars Vilsvik at Strømsgodset. I think he's got potential for a good. But the player I really wanted was Prosper Mendy. I really liked him, but he's ruled out for the season with a cruciate ligament. So forget him. I think he'd have had a great year. So I'm looking at Lars Vilsvik, and I mean Strømsgodset were definitely improved in the second half of last season under Henrik Pedersen, and Vilsvik chipped in with a couple of goals, I think, but they've got potential for clean sheets. I'm not saying he's going to bomb forward on that right hand side and get a bunch of assists and goals, but he's got the technical ability. I think him or Jonathan Parr perhaps could be worth looking at here, although the youngster Mikkelsen could challenge both for game minutes if he impresses. But at the moment, I think Lars Vilsvik is someone I like there. It's early days, and I like their striker Salverson. I think he did really well last year for them. Going forward, he's a big physical unit, the sort of player that you kind of don't mind starting against anyone really, because even against the big teams he can impose himself from a physical point of view and get you a goal out of nothing. But he really seemed to fit the Strømsgodset system quite well. So yeah, tentatively is my third striker option at the moment. 8.5 million, some people might say is a bit expensive, but I think he'll get goals. I think they'll be a decent side this year. Moses Moore is the same price, but he's going to be more out on the wing, so I just don't see him getting as many goals and many points as Salverson in this team. Let's talk about the final player. Oh, sorry, I've also gone for the keeper, Myra. They could probably do with getting another goalkeeper. Actually, Strum's good, so I'm not sure about Myra, but he looks like he's going to be the starting goalkeeper at the moment. So, goalkeeper, I'm not bothered about getting anyone expensive at the moment, because I think all the big teams have got tough matches. So, Myra at the moment looks is in my team now. I've gone with Yander Lanley, Viking. I like Viking's fixtures early doors, and I like Yander Lanley if he can keep fit. I mentioned earlier about not wanting these sort of doubtful players in your squad, but his price is cheap enough, I think, to risk it at the moment. He's quality technically. If he can get himself in good shape, in a rhythm, I think he can score a lot of points for Viking. And again, this is another squad where you could look at it and you could make a case for a few players, but I find predicting their 11 quite hard. I know there was a lot of rotation last year. They were involved in the cup and everything, but even in normal game weeks there was sort of rotation. Tommy Hurland signed a new contract, but he's a bit expensive at 8 million. Berisha 9 could be worth looking at. Midfield, Ibrahima. At the back, maybe Pereira could be one to keep an eye out. So I've gone with Yander Lanley as a potential there, but it's very early days. It's my first draft. I'm going to quickly talk about some of the higher priced players across the league and why I don't want them right now. We'll start with the goalkeeper options, and like I said earlier, the reason I'm not going for any of the big teams goalkeepers like Hansen or Linda yet, I think the fixtures are quite hard. So keep an eye on the Bran goalkeeper situation. They might be getting a new signing soon, which might be worth looking at. In defence, I know a lot of people will be getting Alexander Sturlas. Now, this is a player I intend to add to my squad about round 4, and I go back to these fixtures again. If we look at Haugesund's fixtures, they start with Ålesund away, which I think is actually a bit of a banana skin, tough match. Then they're going with let's have a look at Haugesund, Rosenborg at home, and then Bodø/Glimt away. I don't think that's an easy start. I don't see them keeping a clean sheet in any of those games. So what you're relying on there is Sturlas to score your points in an offensive way, and he can, because he takes all the set pieces. He's good for goals, assists, but clean sheets, I'm not sure. After that, they've got a lovely run of games. Look at this: Kristiansund, Sandefjord, Mjøndalen, Start. Definitely get him in your team then, after round 3. But I would be willing to risk not having him from the start. So that's why I don't want Alexander Sturlas straight away in my team. But he's obviously a player you're going to have to keep your eye on and score. Again, I mentioned earlier why I'm not going with any of the big teams defenders right early doors. I could understand anyone going for these, and they can prove me wrong. Good players, good teams get results, don't they? But I'd rather wait for the easier fixture lists before I'm committing to anyone there. As we go to the midfield, really tough decision, obviously, leaving out Magnus Wolf Eikrem. He's that good, he can do it against anyone, but his price is just huge, isn't it? And you really are making sacrifices. If you want to get James and Eikrem in, of course you can do it, but you're going to have to look for really good value elsewhere. So for now, reluctantly, I'm keeping him out. Helen, for me, is not such a tough decision to leave him out because of the injury risk. I don't want my 11 million man suddenly going down crocked, do I? And I love Samuel, but again, another one is that injury risk. I look down at Ulland Anderson, another massive injury risk. Pellegrini, I think, is overpriced for Kristiansund. I like him, but he's overpriced. And then Vålerenga, similar to Mulder and Rosenborg, they've got a tough start with fixtures. After that, I think the likes, your Bård Finner, Schala and Williamson up front are worth looking at. But early doors, I'm not so keen. We go to the strikers. Uwe Umoramfo. Whether or not he's going to be fit enough to start the season, I don't know. I could see it being like a role reversal for 2019, where it's James who's getting the start, Uwe's on the bench. I wouldn't be going near him until he's fully fit and starting regularly. I'll say that. Turgle Berven was brilliant in 2019, proved me wrong, and I fully expect him to have a pretty good year again. Whether he can match last year, it's debatable, but he's a lot of money, 11 million. So again, if you want to get your Jameses, your Ikrams in the team, can you afford Berven? Islamovic is the starting striker for Rosenborg. Yes, he'll get goals, chances. Again, maybe a tough start with the fixtures, so I'm willing to leave him off. Bamba, definitely keep your eye on him. After that first week, he could be let loose and score a few goals. So yeah, keep my eye on him. I'm really surprised. Just before, it's going to be the last thing I say before the end of the video regarding the players, but Ibrahim Avaji, I think he's still suspended for doping until like July the 19th or something. I don't know whether that ban got reduced. I was hoping to see him quite cheap and then mid-season add him, but obviously you don't want him in your team yet because he's not going to be able to get on the field until midway through the year. That pretty much covers it for now. Some early thoughts there. Hope we can help you all out, but keep your eye out. Have a look at those fixture lists early doors. Who can get off to a good start? And there's some teams that do have a softer schedule, some have a harder one. So a long way to go, a month until the start of the year. I'll be back with some more of these fantasy videos. And Nordic Football Podcast will be back with some episodes very soon. We will be covering the Swedish fantasy again this year, so keep your eye out for that. And the join code for the league, I will put that down on a tweet or something so you can copy paste it, but it's LVD3 to join the Nordic Football Pod League. And we had some great competition in that last year, and looking forward to it again. So hope this gives you some good early thoughts, building your team, your roster for Eliteserien 2020. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you again very soon.